Take a look. Josh Frydenberg, thanks very much for your time this afternoon. So, as Minister, would you like to see more electric vehicles on the road in Australia?
Yes, I would, and I think this is what will happen undoubtedly over time. We're seeing real global momentum towards more electric vehicles as the price comes down, as the range increases and as the recharging infrastructure is rolled out. It's not just across Europe, but also in Asia, where China and Japan have been leading the way, and also in North America, where states like California have seen a large uptake in electric vehicles. I think the key point here is, as the technology improves, customer satisfaction will as well. And while Australia does not have a large number of electric vehicles on the road, some 4,000, about 0.1% of new vehicle sales, that undoubtedly will change over time.
Is this a policy goal of the government to have more electric vehicles on the road, or is this just something you're saying will naturally happen?
Well, we already incentivise the uptake of electric vehicles. There's a lower threshold on the luxury car tax, and the Clean Energy Finance Corporation has been providing financial support for the uptake of electric vehicles. States and local governments are also taking a number of actions, as well as the motoring organisations, the NRMAs, the RACVs and their equivalents in Queensland and Western.
And to be clear, this is because of the lower emissions. That's the goal, the policy goal here, is it? Because there's some argument if they're charged with coal-fired power, there's not a lot of benefit.
Well, obviously the emissions from an electric vehicle reflects the emissions intensity of the grid that is charging it, and as our grid becomes lower emissions intensive over time, then that will be reflected in electric vehicles. But we're already seeing some of the models, for example a Nissan Leaf, substantially reduce emissions than its equivalent petrol-fuelled car. But the goal here is obviously to provide better consumer outcomes, and the consumers are voting with their feet around the world. There are some 2 million electric vehicles on the road, and I think you'll see that happen here in growing numbers as well.
Okay, but the goal here is also lowering emissions. That's why you have the incentive.
That will be an outcome, David, of more electric vehicles.
But not a goal.
Time. Well, a goal, an outcome. They're both obviously things that the government would welcome. But if you look at one of the issues that come out of the uptake of electric vehicles is there is more pressure on the grid because you're seeing more demand. But the advice from the Australian Energy Market Operator is some 1 million electric vehicles in Australia would represent a 2% increase in the demand on the grid, and that this is manageable over time.
Yeah, another reason why we need more power generation, and I'll get to that in a minute. But just sticking with electric vehicles for a moment, as you know, some of your colleagues bristle at the suggestion they should get any more subsidies. Some in the industry reckon they should. They point to what other countries are doing. Are you ruling out any further subsidies on top of what you listed earlier?
Well, we're not proposing new subsidies, and we're not proposing to ban petrol-fuelled cars. What we are talking about is to increase the level of cooperation and coordination at the various tiers of government to ensure that we get a better outcome for the consumer. And you can see, for example, in the recharging stations that they can differ between companies and differ between states. We sort of need a uniform approach there, and Paul Fletcher and I both lead the Vehicle Emissions Forum, where electric vehicles is one of the important issues that is being discussed. But I've had a lot of positive feedback from my colleagues about the discussion on electric vehicles and how important it is to be on the right side of these changes in our economy, in our society. And I believe that the revolution, the disruption that is coming from technology like electric vehicles to the transport sector is akin to what we've seen with the iPhone in the communication sector, or the digital camera, which had an impact on traditional film, or the cloud.
Well, indeed, if you want to be on the right side, if you want to be on the right side of history on this one, if it is a goal, as you say, to lower emissions through the rollout of more electric vehicles, why not do more to encourage that in the form of subsidies or some of the other steps other countries have taken?
Well, we believe we've got the balance right, but as I say, there is more that can be done around coordination. We'll continue to talk to the industry. The discussions with them are ongoing. We have a good dialogue. We've actually provided some funding support too for more research in this space. But one of the big changes that will come with electric vehicles is the improvements in battery storage and battery capacity, and they've improved by about 50% in terms of cost batteries in the last 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, and you're right. One of the obstacles, I suppose, in one of the hurdles is you need to charge them often. They take a while to charge, an hour or so to charge. So we need more charging stations, I suppose, if people are thinking about buying one of these, because they're pretty expensive to buy. Is that something federal or state governments could get involved in, rolling out more charging stations?
Well, obviously state governments, we would welcome state governments investing in this space, and you do point out the cost. Of the 16 electric vehicles, David, that are on offer here in Australia, 13 of those cost more than $60,000. Now, Bloomberg Energy Finance say that the cost of an electric vehicle will be on par with the petrol-fuelled vehicles by 2025. Other estimates are even sooner. And once that occurs, and once you see improvements in battery technology and the range of these electric cars, then I think you'll see a much greater uptake. The Chief Scientist of Australia, Alan Finkel, believes that the electric vehicles will have a distance of some 1,000 kilometres potentially before they need to be recharged in the future, and that again...
Well, that'd make a difference if they had that range. Yeah, that would be a compelling reason if they had that range. They don't at the moment.
Absolutely.
One of the other issues you touch on there is the charging, the need for coordination with the states. Yes, that is certainly a big part of it, but also the fuel excise. Of course, if you have an electric vehicle, you don't pay the same sort of fuel excise as a petrol-powered vehicle. But the government is looking separately at this, isn't it? Whether there should be some sort of contribution to maintaining roads and so on for electric vehicle drivers. What's your own view on that? Is it fair enough that they don't pay the fuel excise, don't contribute then to the cost of maintaining roads and so on, or should they?
Well, as the Treasurer has rightly pointed out, the electric vehicle owners get a great benefit when they don't pay the fuel excise. So already that's a degree of support that they're getting on top of the lower luxury car tax, as well as the support we're doing through the Clean Energy Finance Corporation. So there is a pretty good deal already at the federal level for drivers of electric vehicles. At the state level, there more could be done.
Yeah, but your colleague Paul Fletcher says there's a review into whether electric vehicle owners should be paying an equivalent of the fuel excise to help maintain roads.
Look, that's a debate that he is running and consultation that is in his capable hands, and I'll leave that to him to comment on,
right,
David. But the point is, electric vehicles haven't been taken up in the same number and on the same scale as we've seen around the world, but it's my firm belief that that is coming, and I'm very pleased with the support that I've had from my colleagues in saying so.
Now, finally, on the energy market, and we touched earlier on the need for more generation. We all know that. Your big policy challenge and the government's big policy challenge this year is reaching an agreement with the states on your national energy guarantee. You've got a meeting in April, I understand, with the COAG leaders on this. Where are you at on this? Are you willing to budge at all on some of the details, particularly around how much renewable energy should be in the mix and so on? What's your current position on it?
Well, the first point to make is that this is a recommendation from Australia's foremost energy experts, the Energy Security Board, which was a recommendation of the Finkel Review. The second point is, David, the National Energy Guarantee, since it's been announced, has been warmly received from a broad cross-section of stakeholders, from the big energy users like the BHPs, the BlueScopes and the Dow Chemicals, to the energy companies themselves, to the industry bodies representing millions of Australian workers like BCA, the Australian Industry Group, ACCI, the Irrigators Council, Farmers Federation and others. The third point is we've backed up this policy with independent modelling by Frontier Economics, which has shown that the average household will benefit by some $400 a year, and the large energy users will see a reduction in the wholesale price of power by up to 30% and on average around 23%, which could be worth more than $1 million a year for the
that's over some time, over some years, and based on trajectories.
But David, the point is this. Right, since that announcement, since that modelling, you've had not only coalition states, but also Labor states like Victoria say that this is the game in town. They didn't support South Australia's move to get more work done on the clean energy target or the emissions intensity scheme. The Energy Minister in Queensland, the new Energy Minister, said that the National Energy Guarantee would bring certainty. In South Australia, which is on the cusp of a state election, you had Business SA said there was merit in the National Energy Guarantee and called upon the Weatherall government to come to the table. So I think there is real momentum. The meeting in April will be important, but this is the only game in town, and it's our first chance as a nation in more than a decade to properly integrate energy policy to get a more reliable system and a more affordable system for Australia.
And at that meeting just finally, are you willing to shift on anything? In particular, how much renewable energy should be aimed for under this policy?
Well, renewable energy already jumps significantly under the National Energy Guarantee in the modelled period. And what I am against are these state-based renewable targets that caused so many problems in South Australia when they didn't have enough storage, that are causing problems now in
Victoria. But my question was whether you're willing to shift on the trajectory laid down in your policy. Are you willing to move on that?
No, our position is clear. We support a pro-rata reduction in emissions out of the electricity sector consistent with our Paris target. The Chief Scientist in the Finkel Review warned about the dangers of rushing that process and taking too many emissions out of the electricity sector. There is a transition. My job is not to stop that transition. My job is to manage it in the best interests of consumers. Mistakes that we've seen in South Australia, mistakes that we have seen in some of the other states, should not be repeated on a national level. And that's
so that's a no. That's a no. You're not willing to shift on that.
We're very comfortable with the projection of taking a pro-rata reduction out of it.
And you're not going to shift on that?
Well, that's our position.
So no, that's a no.
That's our position.
Josh FRYDENBERG, thanks very much for joining us this afternoon.